the last divided city in Europe, a city that is near proximity to the Middle East, the Gulf region, the MENA region, and worldwide, a city that matters strategically, but also in its community, a community that matters and its future matters. Today, I have the distinct honor and pleasure to welcome the mayor of Nicosia, Mr. Charalambos Prountzos, who will be talking, among other things, about his vision, the strategic path to success, and the community service. My name is Dr. Marios Efthymiopoulos. I'm the CEO and founder of Strategy International, and this is Prime Analysis. Dear Mayor, dear Charalambos, thank you very much for coming at another episode of Strategy International.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
A new mayor of Nicosia, newly elected, well, not that recently elected, but newly elected still. While we would like to wish you, all the best during your tenure, I'm pretty sure that we have plenty of things to talk, among others. To talk, if you want, about your vision of Nicosia. I've been following quite closely during the period of the election times in the local communities, and you had come up with a great vision, which is quite interesting. I think also for not only for Cyprus but also worldwide, considering also that Nicosia is the last divided city. So before we actually go into the actual political discussions, I want to know, and I guess our audience wants to know about the personality. Charalambos, the young student who had a lot of things to say and a lot of things to dream of. So we usually start with that. So give us a few details so we can understand a bit of how Charalambos' life has emerged to date.
I'm 46 years old, so I've been in office now for 6 months. So, as you say, I'm relatively new. As a young child, as a child of a normal family, sort of middle class. My parents were both civil servants. My dad was working at the Ministry of Finance. My mom is an English teacher. She retired, obviously. Right. Both of them originate from occupied areas of Cyprus. So after the invasion, we pretty much lost everything in terms of assets and property. And my sister was just 2 years old at the time. Right. And my parents really worked hard to manage to rebuild their lives and to give us a very decent upbringing, bearing into consideration the financial constraints that we had. I was born in 1978, so I was born after the invasion. Right. I didn't witness the events, and I only sort of got to know about the consequences, especially to the people close to me. I was a very vibrant child. I was a very energetic child.
I think you still are very vibrant.
I am, yeah. I was always sort of the heart and the soul of the entire pack of friends and people. I was always a good student. Never really the result of extreme studying, but rather the kind
systematic,
the kind of person that really picks up from class and really focuses on the key issues and always trying to have an understanding of what I was doing instead of simply swallowing educational matter. Right. Always a critical thinker, and that was a result of my upbringing. Both my parents are very democratic. They studied during the junta time in Greece, so they were very sensitive on matters of democracy and on matters of freedom of expression. And my dad always gave me two pieces of advice. One was never become an employee, always be the boss of yourself, because he was trained as a lawyer. He lost everything, and
Absolutely,
he was at the civil service, and he wanted me to sort of forge my own career, be a free bird. And my mom, she, in terms of personality, we are very similar. We're very much alike. She's very cosmopolitan. She loves to travel, and she always embraces new ideas. She's a free spirit. She's an artist, and that's part of who I am as well. So from a very young age, I got into music as a singer and as a music player.
Nice.
And for 12 years, I was a professional singer and musician. I actually went to the Eurovision contest in 1997.
Nice.
And, when I started going into politics, some people were concerned whether that part of me should be, out in public. I thought, of course it should be, because that's part of who I am. I'm a musician, the most creative thing. I worked for 12 years as a musician, even while I was studying in the UK, because I studied in the UK. In Bristol as a lawyer. I did my law degree there, and then I did the bar in London at the Institute of Court School of Law. And throughout that period, and even after I graduated, I worked for 3 years in Greece, in Athens, as a musician in some of the biggest sort of shows. And then at the age of 27, I said, okay, what do you want to do? Is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? And I very consciously decided that, a person is like a pack of cigarettes. It's got many different aspects and sides. And I realized that music covered part of these sides. It was not embracing my entire character, personality, and so on and so forth. Beautiful, very creative, but not the whole of me. So I decided to, at the age of 27, to come back to Cyprus. I did my pupillage as a lawyer, and then I worked for about 4 years in law firms, and I started my own law firm in 2010. And then the financial crisis comes, and my practice showed great resilience, and we grew from strength to strength. And the reason was that when I started being a lawyer, we had very established law firms in Cyprus. Real powerhouses, traditional family law firms. And I realized that there was a gap in the market about harmonized legislation. So we had recently acceded the European Union. We entered the European Union in 2004. I started my pupillage in 2005, and I said, okay, how do you build a business? And I focused on things that were underserved at the time in law. And so I went into energy, which was a regulated market. I went into financial services, which was again a regulated market. I went to public procurement. So I did everything that had an EU sort of element.
Right.
So in 2006, I was the first lawyer to deal with renewable energy in Cyprus, in the private market. That
must have been extremely interesting.
And everyone thought I was crazy, renewable energy in Cyprus with the mighty utility, overshadowing everything. And I was very fortunate to have clients that were pioneers, were very persistent. It took us a while, but in 2011, I witnessed together with these people the start of the renewable energy market in Cyprus. And then I continue to elaborate in this field. I love energies. It's got a strong financial element. It's got a strong regulatory element. It's got a geopolitical element as well. So it's really great. And the practice went from strength to strength. In 2017, we entered the EY network. So I became a global partner at EY. And in 2019, I took over the entire region, which consisted of 32 countries, a region called CESA, which was the result of Central Southeastern Europe and CIS merger. So again, that was a
I
great,
guess there was a lot of traveling.
a lot of traveling. So I was out of the country for maybe quarter of a year, every year, but the practice went from strength to strength. So it grew significantly. And, I always had the politics, sort of a political interest. I was never a partisan person, never. Even though I had many opportunities to go into partisan politics, I consciously rejected that. Not because I had something, it was not something, it was part of whether I felt that I could fit into one of the existing parties in Cyprus as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose not to go into partisan politics. I worked a lot on the settlement process. So between 2015 and 2017, I was part of the working group on power sharing and governance in the discussions for settlement of the Cyprus issue. And that's where I got to know Mr. Andreas Mavroyannis, who was the negotiator at the time. And then Andreas decided to run for the presidency in the 2023 election. And, I decided to
be involved.
He gave me the honor and privilege to be the person that would nominate him, because under Cyprus politics, there's one person nominating and 100 persons supporting the candidacy. I was the one that nominated him.
Very good.
It was a bit, provocative in the positive sense, because Andreas was supported by the left-wing party. I was traditionally perceived as a free market, sort of center-right person. It was very intriguing, and it actually gave the candidacy a positive push. Andreas at the time was registering 9% in the polls, and we had a very, very, very successful and interesting campaign, which led to Andreas passing to the second round, me being nominated as the Minister of Finance in case he would be elected, and we lost by a very narrow margin of 7,500 votes. But the experience was invaluable. It made me understand that remaining a partner in a global consulting firm while being into politics would, not be a compatible way forward. I respect that, and I chose to part ways with EY in a very sort of friendly and amicable manner to pursue my own political dreams.
And that's running for mayor successfully, first time elected.
That's how I got to run for the mayorship of Nicosia. It was my first attempt. I think everybody thought that it was a crazy move, because the parties that were supporting the other candidate had a cumulative sort of percentage of approximately 70%. I didn't have any parties, so I ran as an independent behind me. And then during the course of my candidacy, 3 parties came to the support. But I have my own sort of team, a very small, dedicated team. And we managed to win by quite a substantial margin.
So far, we've talked about humanities, art, culture, and I keep those things, and there's a reason why I'm doing this. Environmental knowledge, sustainability, technological agility, traveling around the world. You fit the criteria for a mayor for an international city such as Nicosia that you'd bid for. Actually, I can also testify that you were a person who was talking in a very different but more holistic, strategically, and diversified way. And I guess your actions so far are showing, dialogue, collaboration, strategic outlook, Again, as you said, small team, tiny, but to the point, and that actually works a lot. Um, I was not aware that you were singing.
There you go.
I met you during the national elections with Andreas back then, and I can also testify that he was speaking very highly of you. From, of course, considering the fact that you had worked together and stuff, but I guess the idea, and I think that's a representation for you in as mayor of Nicosia, to be outgoing, to be near the people, and at the same time fit the profile for the international collaboration, whether this is EU led or multi nations led or Middle East led. Considering also that Nicosia plays a pivotal role on the way that it's going to develop vis-a-vis what's going to happen in the Middle East on the rebuilding phase, post-war considerations. But we'll come to that. But I guess all these things that you've mentioned so far have actually not only intrigued you, but I think it has shaped you, has shaped your opinion. I think the way that you were talking, the excitement that you did. Music also plays a very, very important role. It shapes personalities, the rhythm. Politics, I consider politics to be a rhythm. So the rhythm shows a new mayor with a new vision, extroverted. I know what was coming out from your campaign, if I remember correct, was that you are a person of Nicosia. That's what everybody was saying. So you actually know the problems of running elements of Nicosia, and probably you want to forecast also the future. What's your vision of Nicosia?
My vision for Nicosia is very, very simple and clear. It's to make Nicosia the best place in Cyprus for someone to live, to visit, to do business, obviously, and to invest. So it's a very clear vision, and it's a measurable vision, because there are international standards on
because you're mentioning statistics all the time, so
of course.
So I presume you love also numbers
and rankings about the quality of life.
Right.
What I realized is that you have to ask yourself very compelling questions if you are about to undertake a political role. And when we talk about a municipality, or when you talk about a city, you need to ask the difficult questions that will give you the answers. Nicosia is not just any city. First of all, it's a capital of a member state of the European Union. So one needs to take into consideration that you are talking about a city that sits next to Paris, next to Rome, next to Athens, regardless of its size in terms of population. It's a city that is a capital of an EU member state, and it needs to undertake this role very seriously. Second, it is a divided city. It is a city that needs to plan, that needs to operate, and needs to enlighten people about an anomaly on the ground which is not witnessed anywhere in the modern world. So you cannot take that out of the equation, but in parallel, and that's what I try to do differently, you cannot allow that to define you in perpetuity.
So you're talking about identity.
And number three, Nicosia is one of the most historic and multicultural cities in Europe. So these three fundamental elements create the level, the playing field in which a mayor needs to implement the vision. If you take these three characteristics out of the equation, then you are essentially designing in the abstract, and that's a recipe for disaster. And as a technocrat, I would never do that. So I asked the compelling question: why would someone live in Nicosia? Why would someone invest in Nicosia? Why would someone visit Nicosia? And why would someone do business in Nicosia? And it's the answer to these questions that is shaping up my vision for Nicosia. and also shaping up the narrative that we need to articulate in a very clear way to give the answers that we come up with in these four fundamental questions to move the city forward.
You're coming in strong. And this is high-level politics, by the way. It's not only vision of Nicosia. You're putting as a strength point the solution of Nicosia to be a European and international problem that you seem to be very much inclined to the solution of dialogue. And considering that, you're considering that business element, the living conditions, the historiography, the culture, the music, the offerings that the city has to offer, is a city for global citizens.
Of course, 100%. First of all, geography determines that. Nicosia is, and Cyprus is at the crossroads of three continents. And that's a bit of a stereotype, and it's been said
it's a reality.
For decades.
But it's a reality.
But it's how you utilize
exactly
that geography, and it's how you make things happen because of that geography. And it's how you articulate, as I said, the narrative of the city, because a city is a living organism. It's a product by itself, essentially.
It's a day-to-day operation.
And it's an experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you either have a positive experience or a negative experience or a neutral experience. And your experience starts from the minute you go out of the house or from the minute you enter the city, from the minute you try to do business in the city, from the minute you conceptualize and start moving forward with an investment. So we need to cater for all these four stakeholders that I've defined in order for them to have a positive experience in our city. Number one, Nicosia definitely needs to increase its population in terms of expats. It's already increasing its population in terms of locals.
That do business, obviously, and they have stakes.
Why? Because the economy will pretty much benefit from the addition of a substantial size of expats that will come to Nicosia to live permanently, will essentially become permanent residents, regardless of whether they will, of course, travel for their global activities and operations, but will spend in the city. They will
offer
commute,
to the circular
they will
economy.
Bring their know-how and experience, which is also invaluable.
And be involved in the community.
And be involved in the community. Now, other cities in Cyprus, like Limassol, have a large expat society. But we witnessed two shortcomings in the attempt to integrate and to accommodate for this community. One, social cohesion, completely dismantled. So the cost of living drastically increasing, affecting locals and expats alike. And number two, the basic infrastructure of the city in terms of social clustering being unable to meet the demands. And I'm talking about education, I'm talking about healthcare, I'm talking about sustainability, I'm talking about communication and consultation in order to include the needs of these stakeholders into the city. And that's not a criticism to Limassol or to any other city, because
it's a benchmark.
You know, for expats, Nicosia is a very small place. It's a tiny place. And they look at it as a whole. So I never see Nicosia competing with other cities. I always see the cities of Cyprus working synergetically to accommodate a huge
different identity
a huge inflow of foreign nationals, both EU and third country, with specific characteristics that are looking at Cyprus as a safe harbor and as a nice place to live.
Nicosia is also the capital, which means the government. So anybody who also moves into Nicosia, who's an expat, also wants to do probably business with the private sector, but also the public sector.
That's
includes the government. The second part is that the environment, the habitat, the living conditions, the sleeping conditions in Nicosia is really good. Something that we have the tendency to forget sometimes, but you sleep well
Yeah.
in Nicosia because of the climate. It's different when you're nearby the sea. It's different when you're inshore. So the other thing is that I guess you're saying you want to expand Nicosia. So city landscaping is an important thing. You mentioned it in the social structure. I'm mentioning also city landscaping. Nicosia is actually widening. We see now a new highway having been built, a ring road which is yet to do several, bits and pieces to be completed. But then you have that. We're talking about trains. I've read everything about trains. You're doing a very good bicommunal relationship with the occupied area of Nicosia. We've been talking earlier about this behind the cameras about the potential and how to increase this, and that gives an increasing reason that, which is also something that we believe here in strategy, that Cyprus plays a pivotal role in the negotiations. And while we are talking about it, and while we understand or perceive this politically, local community or national politics or so on and so forth, or even the periphery, one thing that we fail to understand is that because exactly of the problems, that the unlawful invasion has caused Cyprus is at a status where it can play a very good negotiation role.
I mean, if we look at the big picture, yeah,
Yes.
We see a tremendous improvement of our relationship with the U.S.
Right.
Cyprus is a predictable and valuable ally of the U.S. in the region. Look at what is happening around us.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is burning. And Nicosia is a pillar of stability. Cyprus is a foreseeable, predictable, valuable partner of both the EU and the US, sharing values, which is also important. So it's not an opportunistic alignment. It's an alignment that is based on values. It's a very credible counterpart to the Middle East.
Right.
It's got amazing relations with all the countries of the Middle East.
And it's developing further and further.
And it's developing them further and further on a very specific agenda, which includes, of course, the economy, which is number one, but also other areas like innovation, like technology, like...
And we're going to go into this. We're going to open this chapter.
Political discussions of high importance between the EU and countries of the Middle East, for which Cyprus has a very active role. It's also part of the Mediterranean, which is obviously an area that politically now has its own importance within the EU with the Med9 initiative.
Right.
And
I want to go into climate. It plays also a pivotal role in climate.
Of course,
seeing a lot of meetings.
Of course, it does. It also plays an important role in the energy transition
Right.
and in the data flow transition. And there are planned infrastructure projects to accommodate that transition. So even though Cyprus is a tiny island in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, it does play a very important role in terms of security, mm-hmm. in terms of economy, mm-hmm. and in terms of the green transition. So geography was very kind with us. What we would do with it is what is important. In terms of Nicosia, we articulated a very clear vision on 6 different pillars, which is essentially a result of the priorities of the European Union itself. So green transition is at the forefront of our efforts. Digital transition is, of course, a significant part of both the municipality itself re-engineering.
Oh, I want to go into these details. So
and also in terms of our communication with the outside world and the stakeholders that I've mentioned before. Number 3 is social cohesion, because we are already witnessing the inflow of investment. And as I said, we want to avoid issues like housing shortage that will send the rental values sky high, like education. So we need to ensure that the city is ready, and it is ready, and it will be more and more ready to accommodate the inflow of significant significant numbers of foreign nationals residing in Cyprus in the future. Number 4 is culture, which is the number one distinguishing factor of Nicosia vis-a-vis other cities, and is a multicultural history that we need to embrace and obviously make more visible for people. We only get 4%, for instance, of tourists for overnight stays, a ridiculous percentage. We want to take that to 10%. And it's a different type of tourist. It's not the sun and sea type of tourist that we are targeting. We are articulating a different tourist product that is a new proposition in terms of the Deputy Ministry of Tourism.
Actually, I have a proposal to make you on this one.
Sure.
Nicosia needs a cultural quarter, a museums quarter.
It has a cultural quarter.
It has.
But
the unification I'm talking about, the infrastructural communication, the walking distances.
You're right. I mean, and as I said, it's all about communication. I mean, whatever you do, no matter how good it is, if you don't communicate it properly in the modern world,
absolutely,
it's like it doesn't exist, fortunately or unfortunately. So we have 49 museums within a radius of 3 kilometers.
That's so important that people hear about this.
It's huge.
Yeah.
We've got the Nicosia Festival, which is an amazing cultural event. We are a candidate for the European Capital of Culture for 2030.
Even greater.
We've got Nicosia as a city that is built within 13th century walls. It's a walled city, a medieval legacy that was created by the Venetians.
And also you have a lot of outskirts.
We do.
And that's also needs some sort of connection with the city landscape, because if you see it from a bird's eye view, it connects with the reason why it's a capital.
I mean, Nicosia, unfortunately, from a town planning perspective, there was an urban sprawling approach, which for somebody that understands how, for instance, transport works, is a significant mistake to make, because you're trying to build density, which helps everything. It helps commercial uses. It creates economies of scale in infrastructure like sewage and drainage, and also helps public transport to operate, because you've got numbers that commute within a financially viable radius.
Right.
Yeah. So the sprawling of the city was a significant issue. Another issue was the fact that we had 30 municipalities. So when you were
metropolitan center,
when you were trying to do a design, for the city, which is obviously larger than the municipal sizes, one had to speak with tons of other people to design in a holistic way. With the local reform that we've had, and I'm the first mayor of the new enlarged municipality, we merged 4 large urban municipalities into one. We now have the ability to capitalize on the significant economies of scale, of course, that this creates. But the most important factor is the ability to design in a holistic way. Right. So, to give you an example, we had the old State Fair grounds, a 250,000 square meter piece of land in a prime residential area of Nicosia. The central government wants to move ahead with a heavy development plan, which has positive uses in it, but essentially destroys the last opportunity to create a large park, a large metropolitan park that will help the sustainability of Western Nicosia. The municipal council took a decision, looking at the city as a whole, that we are against that plan. We ask the government to revoke this initiative and this decision, But we didn't stay there. We proposed a different location,
alternate uses,
in the eastern part of the city, an old industrial estate,
which also needs to be renovated.
300,000 square meters. And we explained the reasoning behind our suggestion. We said that the eastern part of Nicosia requires a growth driver. The western part of Nicosia is the most developing, heavily dense built part of the city. We need to ensure quality of life in that area.
Right.
That area has growth drivers. Let it be. Let's create a metropolitan park in it. And we articulated a very clear vision about the part of Nicosia that requires stimulation in terms of development. So we took the uses and the essential elements of the proposal of the government,
right,
which was not to the wrong direction, but we moved it.
It's an alternate proposition
in an alternative location, which desperately requires growth and desperately
and you also
requires,
do the surroundings, I presume.
Of course. And when you're doing this planning, you have to look at the demographics.
Right.
If you look at Nicosia, it's got a 17-kilometer ceasefire line. We call it Green Line, which is a line that essentially divides the city. In that area, if you look at the demographics, you had aging population, decline in the economy, and increased presence of migrants that obviously would reside in areas which are more affordable. And because of the decline of the economy in that part of the city, it was the area in which they found it more accessible financially to build their own lives. Now, you have two ways of approaching this issue. You either do the painkiller, which is essentially to try to either move these people or
it doesn't
try
viable
to integrate them in a very fragmented way.
Right.
Or you can tackle the issue at its root, and essentially revive the economy of this 17-kilometer area, which presents identical characteristics, integrating migrants in a productive
scale
and forward-looking way, and
documented
also
way,
bringing back the local community to invest,
right,
to create, to do business, and to completely change the trajectory of these areas in terms of demographics, in terms of spending, and in terms of moving forward, really. So whatever we do now has this element of holistic design, looking at the whole of the city top down, and with very clear objectives on what it is that we're trying to do. So a lot of people talk about entrepreneurship. What type of entrepreneurship do we need in Nicosia? So traditionally, Nicosia was the service center of Cyprus. A lot of lawyers, a lot of accountants, a lot of people evolving around the so-called offshore companies industry, which was very lucrative for many decades, predominantly CIS investments that were essentially recirculating through the Cypriot economy. And obviously, after the invasion of Russia into the Ukraine, that model collapsed. But even before that, it was obvious that it was not a sustainable model moving forward because of many tax developments around the world.
Inshore EU-led,
of course,
and so on and so forth.
So the need for Nicosia to articulate a different business model was existent way before the geopolitical turmoil of the post-2022 period.
Right.
And when you have a city that has 4 large universities in it, 30,000 students, thousands of academics of very high caliber, 5 centers of excellence, you need to start thinking differently about what the economy should look like in the years to follow.
And you mentioned it somehow. You mentioned the everyday life in the operations has to do with the strategic vision, and I guess the most important element that I define within what you said is the person who resides in Nicosia to be at the center point of options, while also the ones that are coming in to build in on more options. You're talking about a global Nicosia. You're not talking about EU Nicosia.
No.
You're talking about a center that unites all the necessary prerequisites of a modern city that meets all the standards. Which means technology and environment, the two
Correct.
elements that you mentioned a lot. And I want to go on technology because I've seen you in the in the tech world. I've seen you in the space world, outer space signatories. I've seen you in the reallocation and the utility of old Nicosia. You mentioned it 3 times so far. And you also mentioned environment, which is something that every time I see you, we talk about. I want to start first about the environment, which is the most, most precise element that you mentioned a lot, and it intrigued me. I mentioned 2,000 trees. You said 10,000 trees.
50.
50,000 trees.
Excellent. In 5 years.
In 5 years. So
10,000
trees every 5 years. So I presume with urban planning, with all the assortment, and also the fact that Nicosia's municipality is now bigger, so you can plan ahead wider. How do you envision the practice, the utility? How do you actually put it into implementation for 50,000 trees within 5 years, which I presume also parks, surrounding areas for people, and this? And how do you utilize this in a smart city? Smart city Nicosia, there's a lot to be said, a lot to be told about this. And I guess a lot of people around the world, including neighbors, which are doing a lot of R&D, would be quite interesting. But most of all, a global city such as Nicosia to be.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. In terms of the environment, first of all, climate change is here. It's not around the corner. It's here.
Right.
A month ago, I was, as a city, we are dealing with 50 trees in excess of 10 meters collapsing because of an average wind speed of 16 kilometers an hour and a maximum wind gust of 68 kilometers per hour. So it's an all-time record, by the way, in terms of the average speed. So for any responsible political stakeholder, environment is the number one issue on the agenda, should be number one issue on the agenda, because you are essentially designing not for the current generation, but you are responsible
absolutely
also for future generations that will reside in your city, in your country, in your area, whatever. And for us, the ability to make Nicosia a sustainable city in all aspects of green transition is a key issue, is a fundamental issue in order to ensure its attractiveness and its viability.
Right.
Nicosia has a beautiful green corridor, which is the Pedios River. It's a long vertical stretch. And again, a few days ago, we announced together with the Turkish Cypriot mayor of Nicosia, Mr. Harmanji, the development of Pedios River and its conversion into a sustainable corridor in the occupied areas as well, which is a great achievement. It's something that had been discussed for ages, and we managed to unlock it together with the European Union, which will be funding this bicommunal project. And we see that people are genuinely craving for the opportunity to experience a sustainable way of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
you want more simplicity and at the same time high level quality of living conditions. Absolutely.
And for us,
it applies for all of us.
I mean, when you have temperatures of 40 degrees,
right,
you need to make the city more viable and the climate fresher for everyone to be able to enjoy the 300 and so days of sunlight that we've got in Cyprus. So we've got less humidity than the coastal cities, which is good. but we need to make walking, running, biking, commuting, shopping a viable, beautiful experience in the open air atmosphere that we've got. So to ensure that, and to also ensure the quality of air, which is the number 4 cause of deaths in Cyprus, is air quality.
It's big.
We need to act now.
I'm actually afraid when I hear that on TV, the quality of air, which also means that we need to invest more in infrastructure and technological infrastructure to ensure to be preventive in the approach, not rather like reactive.
Yeah, and we are doing that now. I mean, apart from the planting of 50,000 trees and the enhancement of existing green corridors and parks, we are also now working on the digital twin that Science, which is a spin-off of Nicosia municipality, is a center of excellence, has created in order to look at the infrastructure of the city in a more scientific way. So quantities of rain that were unthinkable a few years back are hitting our cities, not only Cyprus, everywhere, with much bigger frequency. Our systems, our infrastructure needs to be able to deal with this extreme scenario. You saw the very unfortunate
recycling a utility of what is coming, I guess, as well.
Of course, but I mean, you saw the tragic events in Valencia, for instance. Who would have thought of that 2 decades ago? No one. We need to prepare our cities in order to be able to accommodate the challenges
but also use
that
those.
Climate change is creating.
Right.
And we are doing that with the use of technology, with the use of simulations, with the use of extreme scenario and how our infrastructure will behave in case of this scenario.
I know that we can go on for hours talking about those issues, which are extremely important. But I want to ask you a last question, and I think this is important. It's more related with the near future. How do you want people, for you personally, you as Charalambos, to be acknowledged for? What is the success story that you expect or anticipate to do? I know that you're a very promising person, and I'm being very honest here. What I've heard so far shows a person who knows holistically and strategically. You move strategically. You care about your land, which is extremely important. I know you've been caring also about the cleanliness of the city. I've seen a lot of change, presumably for the reasons that you are anticipating, the everyday, because everyday things are running. I mean, we think about the future, but we also think the everyday elements. How do you want to be remembered in terms of results?
I think just producing results is enough. I mean,
what's your legacy?
My legacy, I would
legacy? Look, continuity is one.
In terms of legacy, definitely, if I could somehow contribute to a united Nicosia, that would be the number one legacy that I would definitely be proud of. So from the city to the world. It would be historic because it would send such a strong message to the outside world in an era which is very challenging in terms of turmoil and geopolitics. So that would be, it's not up to the mayor, of course, but the mayor has a role in it.
But of course, uniting Nicosia creates a political momentum. A political momentum creates opportunity for more dialogue, for more negotiations.
So that's number one. Number two, when my term finishes, I would like Nicosia to be number one in terms of quality of life on measurable criteria. We don't need to dig into the separate ones, but
they're measurable criteria.
There are measurable criteria. Because I come from a very humble sort of background, social cohesion is key. And if you ask, you said a couple of times that I am strategic. I am strategic, but at the end of the day, people don't always see the
longer vision,
the strategy. They look at the results and the impact on their everyday lives. Yeah. That's the beauty of being a mayor, by the way. You can make a change and an impact on people's everyday lives. And that's so beautiful, you know. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. So if I can make a positive impact on people's lives, and if I can be an integral contributor to the extent that I can to my city, to our beautiful city, reuniting, I think I can safely go back to the private sector and
Right.
and
But
enjoy my
I
career.
think that gives you more opportunity for more continuity and more upgrade as well. I'm saying this because, in the political world, the success of a mayor leads to central affairs. That obviously depends on a lot of variables, but because of the fact that we made acquaintance during a political season that was changing greatly, and now we're seeing already the results of a new governance and so on and so forth. So things are moving fast. I think that the potential and the way that you're envisioning things gives you the identity of the future. So got to think the identity of the future in a key solving element of Nicosia, if not the country itself. In a solution, in a post-solution, what is our identity? I keep the very best from you, the social cohesion you mentioned 4 times. I also keep the fact that you believe in the trust of the people. That's very important. And ultimately, I would like to thank you also for the time that you have spent. I know you're a busy man. It's not easy to run the mayor of the capital of Nicosia. I know the balances, the vision. Sometimes, it supersedes our personal opinions or feelings, and we have to see it vividly. And I would like to wish you the very best. We at Strategy, we attempt to do exactly what you're saying. From Nicosia, we'll say we are in Nicosia right now, from Nicosia to the world. And we anticipated this dialogue. I guess that this dialogue of civilizations is required. That expat community, that consideration of all the multinational culture and multi-religious culture. This is the world. We're talking about the world. The world is like this today. You name it, in every geographical location. I would like to thank you. I would like to wish you the very best. And we are here to help you and support you as much as we can. But thank you very much for the time you have given to us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Nicosia is always open and always ready to welcome people. It's a hospitable, safe, beautiful place, full of creativity and full of prospects, full of opportunity. About the future in politics, I never saw politics as a profession.
No.
And the pace of change
is
so fast nowadays that if somebody makes plans, I think most chances are that they might end up with their face on the ground. So I always like to focus on the day that we have and on the day ahead of us. I always look at the bigger picture in terms of the cause that I'm serving at the moment. But at the end of the day, it's the results and it's the people that count, and not our own ambition.
Absolutely. Dear Mayor, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Another episode of Strategy International. Thank you. Thank you all for watching another web series of Prime Analysis. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow into our social media and YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Marios Efthymiopoulos. I'm the CEO and founder of Strategy International. And remember, impact makes a difference.